Hello, friends of Studio Burlet. This is Steve Burlet, and it is coffee time, where I go over some of the things that have come across my desk since the last coffee session. And today, I want to point out my VIP Club membership to the patriarchy, which authorizes me to comment on the comings and goings of the evil feminist empire that has stretched its thousands of tentacles around the globe. Today, as you see in the title, we have a special guest, Elliott Hulse. Elliot Hulse is famous from YouTube. I think he has almost or around 2 million subscribers from his days creating Strength Camp. And Elliot can comment on that shortly. I met Elliot at the 21 convention in Orlando, Florida, where we both gave presentations. And we were coming at a similar topic from two different angles. I was approaching the topic from the secular angle, and Elliot was approaching the topic in parts of his talk, or if not most of his talk, from a biblical religious Christian angle. And with no further ado, I'm going to bring Elliot into the show. If I can find the right button here. Here we go. Hi, Elliot.
Hey, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm really glad you could join the show. You had a huge amount of energy and a very positive and interesting, pointful talk at the convention.
Yeah, it was great. And it was so fascinating to find that you and I were on the same page with regard to what we wanted to share.
Yeah, it was interesting because I sat and I watched yours first. And I thought, my God, this guy is he's into the same kind of thing from a different angle. And I don't remember all the details, but you were approaching the topic from a biblical perspective, right?
I did dive into that to some regard, just to sort of point out that what we're dealing with is, first of all, it's not new. And second of all, it's a spiritual battle that we're fighting. It's it's not man against woman. That's just the way it's manifesting. It's really good versus evil.
Right. And that is the age-old battle of humanity, a battle of good versus evil.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Can you tell me, how did you get started in Strength Camp? Because that's massively popular. Just before we get into the other details here, I'm curious. The Strength Camp, it's really about building men up physically, right?
And yeah, mentally? Absolutely. I was blessed to have an uncle. When I was very young, my uncle lived with us, and he was black belt in Kung Fu. He was a martial artist. He also ran marathons. He was an ex-gymnast. And he taught me and my brothers how to do push-ups and sit-ups and pull-ups when we were in kindergarten. Turns out that I had a genetic predisposition to being strong. So it built up my self-esteem as a kid. Later on in high school, my uncle taught us how to weight lift, and I went on to play football in college and earned a scholarship, and also fell in love with the barbell, fell in love with strength training. My uncle also was a personal trainer back in 1994, before it was even a real profession. And so also introduced me to the idea of working for yourself. He was an entrepreneur. And so when I graduated college, I decided that I wanted to be a trainer. I wanted to do what my uncle did for me, which was to teach me how to be stronger. And so, after starting my family, I moved down to Florida, and I really started Strength Camp out of the back of my van. I was a young father and a young business owner, and I really didn't have much to my name, didn't have much assets. So I bought a lot of used equipment, and I actually made a lot of equipment out of trash. We would use tires, from the tire yard, and we would drag them, sandbags, things like that. And so I called it Strength Camp because we were doing them out in the park before boot camps were fitness boot camps weren't even a thing back then. So that's Strength Camp. I continued to evolve the gym itself, but at the same time, YouTube came out, and I started making YouTube videos of what we were doing in the gym, mainly so that my clients could share the videos with their friends and get me more members. And it just turned out that, YouTube videos are also viewed worldwide. And I started getting a lot of feedback, a lot of questions from young men. And so my channel evolved over the years, or actually you see there, I've got two channels. One where I was teaching them what I'm doing in the gym, how to get stronger, how to build their bodies, build muscle, jump higher, run faster, physical prowess stuff. But at the same time, when you build up some credibility and trust with young men, they come with deeper questions, other questions, questions about life, parents, girlfriends, school, career. So as much as I enjoyed helping them get stronger in their body, I really also enjoyed helping them grow stronger in their lives.
That's a great story. Are you still active? When I was flipping through your screen here, this video shows 7 years ago. Are you still doing Strength Camp?
Strength Camp Gym is doing really well. Strength Camp is here in St. Petersburg, Florida. We also have a few affiliates worldwide, other gym owners that I help teach our Strength Camp method and business model to. So Strength Camp itself is doing real well. I don't make so many Strength Camp videos any longer, though.
Okay. What's your main focus? Are you today? Is it still Strength Camp, or are you focusing on other topics as a prime focus nowadays?
Well, my mission is to make men strong, and it's the same thing it's always been, except now it's more a matter of virtue and character, and a lot of the things that you and I were talking about in terms of what's going to be needed in this quote unquote new world that's evolving. Particularly men stepping up into leadership roles that we were designed for, because hard times are going to require some strong men.
Right, and that reminds me of that wheel. Was it you that brought up the wheel? Hard men make good times, and so on. Good times make soft men make hard times, sort of wheel. I forget what it's called, but there's a name for that wheel.
Yeah, that's right. You know, hard times create strong men. I mean, we got to step up and handle what's in front of us. But then, you know, good men create, strong men create good times. Good times create weak men, and then weak men create hard times, and it's just a cycle.
It's a cycle, yeah. Mm-hmm. There was one speaker who went over that cycle in quite a lot of detail. Now, I don't remember his name.
Yeah.
But he was suggesting that, you know, we're coming out of the ends of the good times, and we're heading into the beginnings of the hard times, which I believe that as well. You know?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So my speech was on the one world government and feminists' role in bringing that about. What was your main focus or conclusion in this coming of a one world government sort of new world?
Well, you know, I've had my finger on the pulse with regard to what's happening worldwide for a while now. And then when I started really diving into men's work and helping men become strong again, I recognized how deleterious, how bad feminism actually is. You know, I grew up thinking, oh, feminism's great. Women need more help or something like that. But in doing my research, I discovered that it's actually the other way around. Right now, it's men that are suffering. Men are weak. And as a strength coach, helping men become weak, I had to dig deep and expose the roots of that weakness. And I came upon the cultural Marxist movement.
Yeah.
I was able to pinpoint the root. But when you spoke, you forecasted into the future and saw how the one world government and feminism actually work together in order to bring forth what you mentioned as the feminist world order. And it makes perfect sense. It almost sounds a little crazy, but when you look at it logically and explore the facts, we're there. This is exactly what's happening. I love the way you put it in terms of you said they were unpaid
overseers.
Unpaid overseers.
Yeah.
A lot of the men that I deal with, that they've got trouble with women in their home and in their girlfriends, and it really seems like the women are taking this position of unpaid overseer, and the government is right there to has established it in a way that they become our slave masters.
Yeah, and I claim, and I think it's very easy to see that women are watching carefully, monitoring men in every sphere of life. In the workplace, you've got to be on your straight and narrow. If you even look sideways, you're subject to some kind of discipline or job loss or business loss. And in the home and in public,
yeah,
it's everywhere. And this feminist movement has kind of brought that about. It's encouraged women to be hypercritical of men and completely intolerant to the point of being dehumanizing of men.
Yeah, I recognize that 100%. And men have basically submitted to that and given our power over. And, you know, you look at the suicide statistics and you look at the drug addiction and men in prison and the fatherless homes. Whatever the agenda is, it clearly is succeeding. And it doesn't take much to just look at the facts and recognize that men are struggling, but really it's because men need to wake up and recognize our true potential and role in the family and in the world.
I like what you said there, because you hinted at it and you didn't quite come out and say it, but I know what you're getting at, that men played a strong role in creating this situation. Men of my generation, specifically my generation, I think, and possibly to a degree the generation before me, because a male typical role in a civilization and a social surrounding is to set boundaries, healthy boundaries, and enforce healthy boundaries. But men have been afraid to say no to women for as long as I can remember. You know?
Yeah, I like to call it the mommy culture. And, you know, most of us have been raised primarily by mothers in the home and mothers or women in the schools. And the gynocentric ideology that we subscribe to. So it's almost like we've taken on men are becoming women in a way.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that touches on this kind of lowering testosterone phenomenon that scientists are pointing out and have been pointing out, I think, for 30 years now or so. It's a steady decline in testosterone amongst men. And I wonder if there's some kind of psychological effect at play there. The whole idea, for instance, like if you get lazy and you start to lay around and you don't assert yourself, you stop going to exercise and doing some gym, your testosterone level is going to drop. And I'm thinking it might be a kind of a self-feeding cycle. And that,
well, you look at the kinds of careers and jobs that we're told we're supposed to go after, we sort of denigrate physical work in our culture, and it's more about achieving these high jobs, these high flying jobs that are really boiled down to sitting behind desks and typing. And now with the proliferation of screens, we just become addicted to technology. And, you know, as Ralph Waldo Emerson once said something to the degree that, you know, you give men the horse-drawn carriage and take away his ability to walk. And by taking away his ability to walk, he grows weaker as a result of technology. Now that's an 1800s example, but you know, the horse-drawn carriage made men weaker. Just think of where we are today, where we don't have to do anything. You can literally just sit in your home. Since COVID, not only do we not have to go get our food, like grow it and hunt it, but we just push a few buttons and it literally just shows up at our front door. When you don't have to do anything, if you don't use it, you lose it. And if there's no need for strength, there's no need for vigor, we waste away.
And now it's upon us to be disciplined, to go out and put yourself through something like a strength camp or some kind of training program to compensate for this. Because for instance, my work requires virtually zero exertion. Most of my life, my work has required zero exertion. But I've been really, really interested in sports all my life. And so a lot of my energy outlet went into various different sports. Mm-hmm. You know, so that had, I think, a very positive effect on me. Sports have always felt been mentally uplifting to me. You know,
well, today sports are considered toxic. You know, especially when it comes to competition. I just had a conversation with a millennial who was complaining about the fact that everybody gets a trophy. You know, competition is a very male characteristic, and if you take away our desire and our ability to compete in sports or even in the workplace, you know, I read something with regard to how men just don't want to compete with women. Like it's not fulfilling. I remember being a kid and like, you know, if you're playing pickup basketball and like, you know, you're playing against the girls, it's like, oh, come on, why? Well, we face that.
You know why, right? It's a no-win situation for a man. You know, if you try all your best, you're bullying the woman.
Right.
If you go out 25% lose, you're going to be ridiculed left, right, and center like a guy who lost to a girl. I've been there. You know, I've been there. I played competitive squash, and there are a lot of good female players in squash. But there's something drilled into my head in those days that, you know, you just don't go all out against a woman. You hold back. You play 50%. And of course, when you start playing 50%, you start to go to sleep in your head, right? You're not in the game. And then you end up, before you know it, you've lost a couple of games and everybody thinks you're a wimp, you know?
Right.
And if you go out there and you just hammer it past them and the woman doesn't get a chance to hit the ball, then they say, oh, you look at that asshole bullying on her, you know?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's no good result possible.
No.
In competing with women. And this is going right through our culture. They've joined. I'm going to throw this out there. Maybe you know about this one. The Boy Scouts started to let in girls.
Right.
I think it was first started in Minnesota or something, or it might have been in Canada and up around the north, that border there. And then within about a year or two, there were no boys left. Right. It was they had started having all girl Boy Scout troops.
Right. Right.
I mean, it's a joke.
It really is. There's no safe, you know, in this world where everybody needs a safe space, there is no safe space for men.
No, that's right. And if you try to create a man space, what do they say? Hey, you're blocking it. You're blocking out women. You're discriminating against women. But then you let women in there, and then within a few years, they push all the men out. You're back to where you started again.
Right. And that's exactly where we are.
Yeah. It's comical in a way, but
it is. It's actually very funny when you think about it. It's silly and it's sad at the same time. What's even more sad is that a lot of people can't see it. We've been so brainwashed that even to have these kinds of conversations, it seems like there's something wrong. Like we are not even allowed to talk about this stuff. That's how you know how far we've slid.
Yes, in fact, even any legitimate criticism of women are doing or feminists are doing will and almost inevitably result in you being called a misogynist. You hate women because you've pointed out something they're not doing right. Even it doesn't matter how right you are and how damaging it is that group is doing that behavior, you will still be called a misogynist in today's world.
Yeah. What's even worse is it's the men doing it against men.
Yeah, yeah. That's the whole gynocentrism programming, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what's your big project now, Elliot? What are you focused on? You're helping men more in a psychological, spiritual kind of all-round way?
Yeah, you could put it that way. You know, ultimately making men strong in their body is I'm still a strength coach. It's, you know, it's what I am. I was a strong man. I was an athlete. It's where I'm able to connect with men. In fact, I believe that that's a great place to begin with becoming the best man that you can be at a young age. You know, every young man, every 14-year-old boy, once that testosterone starts bubbling up, should grab a barbell. You should take advantage of the gifts God gave you by building up a strong body. Having a strong body will also lead to a strong character. You'll carry yourself differently. You'll think about yourself differently. You have more confidence. But at the same time, you know, I was listening to a YouTube video where, there was a priest who was talking about effeminacy, and he talked about how you could have like this, 6'7" pro basketball player who's like, he's a beast on the court, or like, a defensive lineman, these giant men who will destroy you in an instant, but they're soft in character. You take away their iPhone and they want to cry. They're complaining. I think of LeBron James in particular. What a big, strong, quote unquote, alpha male who is a whiner and he's a crybaby, and he's perpetuating a victim mentality in the people who he thinks he's helping, but he's not. It's more of a big, strong man with a mommy's brain.
That's an interesting way to put it. I mean, I'm familiar with some of what with LeBron James's stance, of standing up for, I think, Black Lives Matter and that kind of stuff. Is it? Mm-hmm. But and there are a few stunts they've pulled, but I don't follow basketball really, so, and I don't follow LeBron James, so I understand where you're coming from. I just don't know about it that much. I don't watch it.
Yeah, you know, the best way to describe, just because this is the way I was introduced to these ideas, is the red pill mindset. You know, we've got to wake up to it. In fact, it was the red pill mindset that brought me back to the Bible, because I began to recognize that the Bible is so red pill. That's probably part of the reason why it's so suppressed and, you know, laughed at, or nobody, you know, people buy it, but nobody reads it. So it's been for me just a matter of, in these past few years, waking men up to feminism, gynocentrism as the enemy, clear as day. That is, as much as the serpent was the enemy in the garden, feminism is the enemy in our society. That I equate the two. It comes straight out of hell. But not only that, we've been missing various components of masculinity. You could say it's due to fatherlessness, and a denigration of masculinity in our media. You look at, like, you know, media characters and how men are usually portrayed as buffoons, or either that or overly aggressive and tyrants. So my stance these days is to make a comeback to the true, strong alpha male leaders that men are designed to be, and that's what I teach.
And what are you involved with a church, a particular church, or are you just referring directly to the Bible on your own? Are you religious now?
Well, I had grown up as a Catholic. I you know, was baptized and confirmed, and then I went on a spiritual journey where, you know, I dabbled with all kinds of stuff, some good, some not so good. You know, I was deep into the New Age and Eastern religion and philosophy way back before it was, you know, the internet is kind of what allowed a lot of those various religions to explode in the West. But it was coming, you know, I guess from the 1960s. But
Yeah.
right as the internet came out, I found Alan Watts and Osho, and I dived deep into the New Age and various religions. But about 3 years ago, I had an awakening, you know, in terms of discovering gynocentrism and the evils of feminism. I discovered that, you know, all these things come about because we've forgotten patriarchy. We've forgotten the God of the Bible and his advice on how to live, his law on how to live. And that's what brought me back to Christianity.
Cool. But you're still Catholic then. You're a practicing Catholic.
Yeah, so I haven't thrown away Catholicism. I mean, when I came back into the faith, God gave me the idea that I need to confess. You know, I was so sinful in so many different ways, just wrong ideas. And it was just an inspiration. You know, God spoke to me and said, "Go and confess your sins and repent and come home to me, my son." And so I didn't know where to go. I hadn't been to church in decades. So I just went to what I knew from my youth. It wasn't like a philosophical choice. It wasn't something that I thought over. It was just, this is where I come from. Let me go there. Now, I do understand that the Catholic Church is in deep apostasy. I do believe the Pope is communist, and there's a whole lot going on wrong in the Catholic Church. But I was grateful for the fact that I could return to something stable, and there was a family there for me. So I go to Catholic church from time to time, but I also bring my children to a Protestant church, really anywhere that they could receive the righteous word of the Lord in its unfeminized fashion.
Do you take the Bible like to be the literal word of God, or are you approaching it from a metaphorical or allegorical approach, or how's your approach to that?
So I've been there, I've been there in terms of being taught that it was literal. And then I got into the New Age and astrotheology and, all these various spin-offs. And I thought it was metaphor. And where I am today is I see the value in both. And it requires faith, which requires courage to accept things that you don't understand as true. And a lot of times I may not understand what's written in the Bible, but I believe it to be literally true. And so there's the historical aspect. I believe that it is historically true, but I also believe that beyond that, above and beyond that, whether it's historically true or not, there are lessons to be learned. There is great symbolism, and there are great cycles, and there are great metaphors that even if you do choose to look at it metaphorically, you will gain quite a bit of value.
Yeah, I definitely with you on that. Jordan Peterson talks in that fashion as well, is that, you know, some of these sacred texts carry long, hard-won insights into what it is to be a human being and how to live together as a community in a positive way. There are those insights in there, and insights into the dangers of the dark side of human nature.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of that in there.
Yeah, and I did not give it its due diligence in my youth. I think we live in an antichrist world where we're turned against not just God and Christ, but the Father. And so you see it from above, but you see it from below. You know, a world that is willing to remove the fathers from the home, a world that promotes promiscuity and abortion, is a world that hates fathers, hates men. And at the same time, if you're going to chop men off, you got to chop them off at the top. And the top guy is God the Father. So for feminism to reach its ugly climax that we're at right now, you have to kill God. You know, this is what Marxism is. You have to get religion out. You got to kill God, and then you got to kill men. You got to kill fathers, because we are the authority.
That's an interesting point. Let me take back just to where you said God spoke to you and said to go and I believe you said confess your sins. Like, how did God speak to you?
So I like to think that God speaks through revelation. In fact, that's biblical. God speaks through revelation. I never sense that the voices in my head are God, because I have been very fooled very many times by my own ego. And I'm thinking, oh, this is what God's telling me to do. Oh, I guess this is what God's telling me to do. These days, I take a much more practical approach. That was more of my, new age way of thinking, which can lead to all kinds of bad decisions, because a lot of times they come from our own traumas. Our feelings are often perverted because of past experiences. Our thoughts have been perverted by the media, by the wrong thinking proposed by culture and education. And then also I said that this is a spiritual battle. And I do believe that there are demons, there are dark forces that will come and taunt you and talk to you and fool you into making poor decisions. So where I'm at in my life today is I don't trust myself. I don't trust my thoughts. I don't trust my feelings. I open my eyes and I wait for God to show me, or God is always showing us. God is always showing me, but to have the discernment to see what God is trying to show me. And so
how do you make that discernment? So there comes a point where you're at a decision process of some kind, and your discernment is kind of deciding what is the right thing to do, distinguishing between the various paths, right? So what makes you make that ultimate choice? Is there, or do you feel something powerfully pull you in some direction, or what is it that tips the balance for you?
I think that I know that men need an authority. In order to do what's right and to make the right decisions, this is the reason why there's a hierarchy. In every institution, there's a hierarchy. In the family, there's a hierarchy. In this world, there's a spiritual hierarchy. And the hierarchy exists because there are those that are wiser than us. There are those that know more than us. There is wisdom that comes from above. And in the discernment process, I believe that looking for biblical evidence in the decisions that I'm going to make is prudent. Otherwise, I'm resting on my own knowledge, and then I do not acknowledge that there's an authority. I then become my own authority, and that's really what got me into trouble, was being my own authority, being my own God, and it's what's gotten the world into trouble. We are our own authority, our own God. So in the discernment process, it is a matter of course, our own inner senses, but that always has to be matched up against some authority, and I see the Bible as that authority.
Okay, the Bible is the ultimate go-to decision-making format or source that you reach for.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about traditional marriage.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really I've been vocal about this in the past. I feel it's a really bad deal for men.
Oh, yeah.
I think that it's in its idealized state, I think it's very healthy for families and good for society. But the reality is, we live in today's world with today's laws. And so when men talk to me, or I get into a conversation about traditional marriage, I say, avoid it like the plague. It's not a good deal. But that's a problem for somebody who believes strongly in traditional biblical teachings, would you say? Or how would you respond to that?
Yeah, I agree with you. And I give very similar advice to men, only because we're in a predicament where the world is so fallen and degenerate around us that it's not marriage that has gone sour. It's the laws that have perverted marriage that have destroyed it. I got married
So you're
very.
talking about marriage in two different ways then. You're talking about the marriage of person to person, kind of soul to soul, versus the legal meaning of marriage.
Right. Yeah, there's a big difference
Right.
there. Yeah, God married Adam and Eve in the garden, but they didn't necessarily sign a contract with the state. You know what I'm saying? So the state, the laws, I for a long time there, I was a libertarian. And I still have a lot of libertarian leanings. And it's like the more we can get the state out of our lives, the better things would be. If the divorce laws weren't what they were, and if the divorce courts aren't what they are, marriage would make more sense, because it would be a true commitment, and it'd be a true sacrifice on both parts, because the promise has been made not between me, my wife, and the state, but me, my wife, and God the Father. And that holds a lot more. The sentiment there is far deeper and means so much more on the spiritual level, on the soul level. We live in the world that we live in, that is so materialistically based, and we're so mystified and hypnotized by the Maya, that we think that this is the end all, this is the be all. What I get and what I have and what I feel means everything. But when we take it from a spiritual perspective, we recognize that, look, if I get into this marriage and it's between me, my soul, this woman's soul, and God's soul, that there is this is a process that we've decided to embark on. This is a journey we've decided to embark on, not for our own lives, our physical livelihood, but for the development of our souls. When two souls come together and God is a part of that union, there is an evolution that goes on there that's designed to strengthen the virtue in both of those souls. And if we look at it that way, rather than, I'm not getting what I want, or there might be something better else out there, when we look at it from the spiritual perspective, we're much more willing to sacrifice and to roll with the punches rather than stepping out of the ring.
All good points. My concern when I think about traditional marriage is, what about that guy who has to face divorce now, and he's going to be screwed, right?
Well, you can't get out of it these days. So the state is going to be involved regardless. It's just the law that we live in. Even if you choose to not sign a marriage contract, they've got laws that say if you live with a woman too long,
yeah, that's right. And there was a guy in Canada who's ordered there's a guy in Canada, you may not know this case, I'm going to throw this out there, but he had a long-term girlfriend. I don't remember the exact term, but it was a long-term girlfriend. They never lived together in the same house. Okay. Mm-hmm. But they were a couple for more than 10 years at least. And after he broke up with her, she insisted, and he wanted to marry her, but she always said no. She wouldn't sign a what do you call those, pre-marriage agreement,
Right.
And so he didn't marry her. And then after the relationship broke down, she sued him for alimony and won a lot. It's like she won something like $6 million. This guy's fairly wealthy, but he never even lived with them. They maintained separate homes. He bought her home, his girlfriend.
Right.
Okay. And he was still screwed.
Yeah, that's the feminist world order.
Yeah.
That's it. That's it in a nutshell right there.
So we still recommend guys get married.
Like I said, you're gonna suffer regardless. So here's the thing: if you are gonna get married, the state's gonna be involved regardless. So sign a prenuptial agreement. You know, I would.
Those are getting tossed out too these days. You know, you've heard cases of these prenuptial agreements, and the judge says, no, I'm not going to abide by it.
Yep.
That's
Look,
our feminist world, right?
Here's something that St. Paul says. He says that it is better for a man not even to look at a woman. And so you see this sentiment in the MGTOW movement.
Right away, right from the Bible, right?
Right. I have great respect for the MGTOW movement. A lot of people denigrate them and turn them and say they're crazy or something like that. But even as a married man, I have a lot of respect for men who become MGTOW monks. And because the first relationship is with God the Father, is that's the first and primary. And St. Paul even says it. He says, it is better not even to look at a woman. And I understand that now. And so it gives me, that's why I have respect for the MGTOW movement. And he says, but if you and really, he kind of points out that, if you're so weak that you need a woman, like if the flesh is so lustful that you cannot help yourself, and you got to look at women, and you have to have sex, then marry. And he likens the bond of marriage to the vocation of being a monk. So it's like it's either monk or marriage, and that's basically what I tell men. I said, if you must marry, well, do it. Try to mitigate your losses the best you can. Hopefully it works out. And then, I pray that we can go back to the values that allow marriage to work. But if you're not, be a monk. So how do I say, be a monk or marry?
Be a monk or marry. Well, there might. I think I have some ideas for some middle ground there we could talk about later. But now I forgot what I was going to ask you there. It was relevant to that, but I'll have to set it aside. Oh, well, what do you recommend guys do to mitigate the risks? You have some specific ideas that you say mitigate the risks essentially when you go to get married. So one of them we talked about was a prenuptial agreement. What other kinds of ways can guys mitigate their risks in today's marriage?
Well, there's no guarantees, of course, that.
Not. Yeah.
But when we begin looking at traditional gender roles and knowing our roles and playing our parts, you set yourself up for greater success. And that has to go both ways. Don't marry a feminist, right? Don't marry a woman who
don't date a feminist. Don't sit on the same bus with a feminist.
Right. Yeah, you mitigate your losses. Do not hang out with feminist women. And it's going to sound misogynist when I say these things, but don't get involved with career-oriented women. Don't marry a woman with a doctoral degree. Don't get involved with a woman that has a big ego. Don't marry women that make money than you. Don't marry that are older than you. There are various.
Hold on a second. What about you meet this beautiful woman? She's wealthy, independently wealthy. That could be a good thing for a guy. She's got more to lose than he does, let's say. So, if she has more to lose than you, isn't that a kind of ace in the hole, like a bit of an insurance policy?
I think you have more to lose by marrying her because she's not going to respect you the way a man is to be respected in his home.
Why is that?
She will always dangle that above you because women have egos too. And a woman who knows that she brings more value to the relationship than her man she will resent him at some point or in some way. It's the tables turned.
I agree with that quite a lot. But what comes to mind is something I say to guys all the time when these topics come up. I say, for a man's only superpower today in a relationship with a woman is the ability to first say no, and second, walk away.
Yeah,
walk away. Let's say she's disrespecting him. Well, he's got to straighten up his spine there and say, you're disrespecting me. Don't do that. And if she can't abide by that, then he says, something, it's my turn to visit the lawyer and this is done.
Right.
See how you like the legal process when you're have the upper financial hand.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's a way to sort of rein that in. Like, we both men and women should respect each other, and I take what you say there very truly, that women don't tend to respect guys below their social status level. They expect the man, they are generally attracted to men upwards in social status, and I made that point as well in my presentation.
Right.
But that doesn't mean you're entirely powerless. I think where it comes down to is that the temptation to stay with that woman and with that particular woman, even when she's mistreating you, or just maybe the temptation of living in her mansion and the cushy lifestyle, that's the temptation that the guy's got to overcome. Say, it's not worth my self-respect. So if it's going to go down that road, well, we got to part ways. What do you think? Is that a viable sort of card to play should that come about?
I still think it's a red flag. If you're shopping for a car, there are certain things you're looking for, like, you kick the tires. And so in terms of kicking the tires or dating or whatnot, if a woman, that's a check against her. A woman who's making more than you is a mark against her, in my opinion. I don't think it's worth living lavishly in the lap of her provisions. Can outweigh having a disordered relationship. I don't think it's worth it.
Yeah.
And it's a wrong reason to get into a relationship anyway.
Oh, I'm not suggesting that's the reason to get in, but let's just say you run across, you're out and you're doing your business, you got your own business going, you're doing your thing, and you happen to run across some woman who has to be like 10 times wealthier than you. I mean, it's hard to say, oh, well, she's too rich, I'm just going to write her off.
It's a deal breaker. If men are interested in what I think men, I'm going to say should be interested in, but ultimately I think is the right reason for a relationship is to have a family and to have children. There's a high likelihood that a woman in that position is not going to want to give up her career. She's not going to want to give up her status. She's not going to submit to becoming a wife and a mother. She's going to be your mommy. That's just
okay.
More than likely, that's what she's going to.
I'm going to keep challenging you. Okay.
Please.
What about this Supreme Court Justice nominee, Amy? I forget her last name. I mean, she is as successful as most people could probably dream of. She's a Catholic. She got 7 kids or something.
Mm-hmm.
And she's in line for the Supreme Court. Didn't that guy make a good catch there?
The first thing I would acknowledge, first of all, I'm so impressed by her. And I asked myself the same question. I was like, wow, that is a powerful woman, but she's Catholic. She's traditional Catholic. That means her values lie above and beyond her status in the world. She's willing to be a mother. She's willing to be a wife. And I don't know her. Of course, I don't know her. But from the looks of her life, she values family and, of course, her faith above her position in the world. Now, we talked about the destruction of the family, which begins with taking the fathers out of the home. Well, that is just subservient to God the Father, taking God the Father out. And so there's a I said red flags. Well, then there's a green flag to a woman that's a traditional Catholic. There's your chances are much higher there because, number one, she probably believes in the biblical order, the natural order in the home. She probably leaves her work at work, but comes home and does as God instructs and submits to her husband. As a Catholic woman, she is in favor of having big families, and she has a big family. So she
clearly loves children, and that's a good sign. So we're at a neutral stage. We got a green check on one side, we got a red check on the other side. She sails through their neutral, right?
Yep, because God is first, God the Father.
Good one. Okay, let me go back to something here. You don't have to answer every question I ask. You mentioned though before, because I don't know where your personal boundaries lie on these questions. So bow out of any question you don't want to get into. But you mentioned you ran into trouble before which kind of ultimately drove you back towards Christianity, towards God. Do you want to talk about that?
Well, my primary sin is pride. And so I was blessed with a lot of talent, both physically and in the world. I was very successful in business. My YouTube channel exploded. I became very popular. A lot of people loved me, and I got addicted to it. I leaned heavily on my persona and what people thought of me. And when things were going good, I was very puffed up. Had a lot of pride and a lot of infantile grandiosity, and that bubble was burst. When there came a point where I had to face reality, and I had to acknowledge that I'm not as awesome as everybody keeps telling me, and that there's a dark side to Elliot. And so I think something that happens cyclically in a man's life, namely, midlife, you're forced with facing your dark side. And I recognized in myself, my outer life was great. Family's great, business is great. But within myself, I recognized that I had a lot of wrong ways. I had a lot of wrong thinking, and I was childish in a lot of my behaviors and thoughts. And so in facing that and dealing with the pain that's associated with that, I was humbled. And in that state of humility, the word humble comes from humus, dirt. I was broken down into the dirt. I mean, what really probably started the cascade was all the injuries I was getting. Here I am, a pro strong man with beautiful body, and everybody loves me on YouTube, and I tear both biceps. I tore my Achilles tendon. My body started breaking down. So, the tool by which I established my grandiosity began crumbling before my eyes. And that's what forced me to look deeper. It's like, okay, Elliot, well, now you realize you're not invincible. What else is there to you? And what I saw was things that were actually very weak. I couldn't keep up the persona any longer. My body was breaking down, and it forced me to look into my soul. If you ever read Iron John, great book for men, there's a part in the book where he says, every wound is a womb, and every physical wound is literally an opening that allows God to insert himself into you, because without that wound, there's no opening and there's no opportunity for a rebirth. And that's basically what happened to me.
Were you getting depressed and stuff?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That's hard to go through, especially when your entire life is wrapped around that kind of aura of invincibility and strength.
Right. And I exude confidence. It's my nature. I get it from my father. But what people saw and expected from me on the outside paled in comparison to, what was really going on in the inside. And that was a hard bridge to gap. Vulnerability wasn't one of my strong points.
So how did you get through it? Did you reach out to someone in particular, or what was your mechanism to get through that and come out the other side?
Well, to be honest, I wallowed in it for a while, and I got addicted to smoking weed. So for about 4 years,
You checked out for a bit, huh?
I checked out. I quit making YouTube videos. I left my gym. I locked myself up in an office across town, and I smoked weed and did yoga because I was injuring myself, and I was just I had to numb the pain, and I did that until I realized that I've gotten myself now into another hole, and I would try to quit. People say marijuana is not addicting, but I would beg to differ. And every time I would try to quit, I realized I keep going back to it. I need help. And that's really when I sought the Lord, because I realized that my will is not strong enough. I'm a willful guy. I've got a strong will. I was able to achieve what I did in business and in sports because of my strong will, but I could not muster up the willpower to kick this demon. And so I said to God one day, I was like, look, I can't quit. I'm not going to quit. I said, I'm not going to quit this. I'm not even going to try anymore. I said, reveal to me when and how you're going to take this away from me. I put it in the Lord's hand. And I actually just said, I'm not going to quit. You take it away from me. And that moment came. And when that moment came, I was ready. And
Can you describe that moment?
I'd rather not tell the whole story, but
okay. Whatever. You don't have to say anything you're not comfortable with saying, obviously.
Right. the main thing is that I was high, and in that moment, I was able to see just how damaging this was to me, but not just to me, but to those around me.
Your family?
And yeah, I saw what it was happening to in that moment, I was able to see, whoa, I am going down the wrong path for my family. And that in that moment, I flushed it down the toilet, and that was it.
Just like that?
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, what I had to do, as with every drug addict, right? Religion is a drug too, right? And Mark say that was the opiate
of the masses.
Opiate of the masses. Well, I tell you what, I take that opium over smoking weed, because I know I needed to replace it with something, because there was an emptiness within me. And I was grateful for the Catholic Church in that it provided me with daily mass. I was receiving the sacraments every day, going to confession and praying the rosary 3 times a day. If I couldn't keep myself focused on those rituals, which is a blessing, I would have fallen right back into it.
How long did it take you to feel like you came out of that hole?
About 6 months.
6 months. And was that a long time ago, or when did you go through this process?
About 2 years ago.
2 years ago. Okay. Awesome. That's good to see you come through something like that, because those experiences, because you'll run across other men in that dark place where you were.
Yeah.
And that ability to know what you went through and how you went through it could be a turning point for the men that come to you for guidance and see you as that patriarchal leader sort of man.
I realized I needed to go through it in order to be able to mentor the men the way I need to mentor to them, or they need me to mentor to them. Because again, I was a golden boy. Everything was, I don't say everything was easy for me, but it was like, come on, Elliot, you come from a great family with parents that love you. You got a great business. You got a great family. Look how strong you are. You got a great looking body. You're all popular. You're making money. Like, life was so good that I recognized that I would never be able to, I can't relate to people who have struggles. Like I said, I was a willful man, but I recognized that my will was weak when it mattered most. And I had to see that weakness in myself so that I could humble myself and relate to the men that seek me for inspiration.
Are you still going to church daily or weekly, or?
Not daily, weekly though.
Weekly, yeah.
Yeah, COVID threw a spokes. What did it say? It throws a wrench in the spokes.
Wrench in the spokes. Yeah.
Threw a wrench, and I was grateful for my experience in that with the Catholic Church in that time, in that I was able to look past some of the negativity. There's a lot of things there's going on there that I knew that if I wasn't humble, I would harp on. I'd be like, I'm not going to do it, because I can point out, I can denigrate, I can point out all the negativity. But then when COVID came, and they shut down the churches, and then they open it up, and everybody's wearing masks. I shook my head, and I was like, we're supposed to be spiritual warriors for Christ. We're supposed to be rebels. This is the essence of Christ's his life, is that you do what's right regardless. And I just saw how quickly they just rolled over and did everything that the state told them to do. And I recognized, that they get their power from the state too. And then I started becoming disenfranchised with it. And I was like, I let that take over. So I go to a Protestant church, but in my neighborhood, which is much closer, but mainly now not for myself, because I'm pretty strong in my rituals. I still pray every day, but mainly so my children are introduced to Christ and the Bible and Christianity.
Oh, so your whole family is involved in the same church, and has it brought you together closer?
Oh yeah. In fact, my daughter, was going through a hard time not too long ago. Just this morning, I gave her a really good book to start reading, which is called The Young Man, the Elder, and Father Pasillos. I really am, I'm most inspired by Orthodox Christianity, to tell you the truth. That's where I do most of my reading. I have an Orthodox Bible, and I have I read like the Philokalia and the writings of the words of the Desert Fathers, and like I love reading the early church stuff and the Orthodox stuff. So I gave her that book, and in the book it said, there was a passage, she took a picture and texted it to me today. It said, a family that prays together stays together. And to get that from my daughter, who was struggling a year ago, she was, she's 16 and emotional. And
that's a tough age. Yes, that's a tough age. Oh, for sure.
She's come out of it. I did a lot of praying for her, and then to see her, acknowledging these things has definitely brought us together.
And you have a son as well.
Mm-hmm.
How old is he?
He's 11. He and I just got back from Idaho, where we did a father and son wilderness survival camp.
Ooh, cool.
Yeah, we did a lot of crazy things out there, including building a debris hut. We slept in a debris hut. So basically it's a dirt hut, a hut made out of sticks, logs,
whatever you can
find, leaves, and dirt, and you pile it up and you got to crawl in it. And so he and
my
I did
back is hurting just hearing about it.
Oh man, I was cramping.
My style of camping now is similar to the digs at the 21 convention. That's camping for me now.
Yeah, my parents are from Belize, and so they grew up with dirt floors. They grew up camping. Like, we went back a couple years ago. My dad showed me the house that he grew up in, and it literally was like a pile of rubble. And so when they came to America, they wanted the finer things in life, like a real floor in your house and a roof over your head. And so when they're kids, that they raise American, we would say, oh, we want to go camping. Our friends are going camping, or we see camping on TV. They're like, we came to America so you don't have to sleep on dirt floors. We're not taking you camping. So, of course, when I had my family, the first thing I wanted to do, the first vacation we took them on was camping, because I wanted to go sleep on dirt floors.
Did your parents go? Have they gone with you camping? No?
Yeah, they have no interest.
No. Been there, done that, bought the t-shirt.
Yeah, that's right.
So, Elliot, we've been on an hour already. Time just flew past. Is there anything else on your mind, like, that you want to talk about today?
I just want to acknowledge you, Steve, for the work that you're doing, man, and the fact that we really do need to expose feminism for what it is. We need to wake up out of this demonic stupor and the diabolical disorientation this whole world has fallen into. We have to see ourselves as we really are, and that begins, with men taking our place and being strong, but also the dark side of female nature is not something that the world wants to acknowledge. I have 3 daughters and I have a wife, and I love them, but they're flesh and bone beasts just like you and me. And the world that puts the pussy on the pedestal does not want to acknowledge that. And so for someone with the, of course I sound like a meathead just saying these things, and maybe I'm misogynist or whatnot, but I consider you an intellectual or a researcher and a historian, someone as intelligent as you are, that's putting out solid content to really expose the truth is so critical in this day and time, man. So, if nothing else, I want to acknowledge you and the work that you're doing.
Thank you so much. That's glowing. I don't know. I have to deflate my ego over here a little bit now.
Yeah.
But you did touch on something really important, and the dark side of female nature. Feminism, to my mind, I've come to see it as the expression writ large of the dark side of female nature, because women, and feminism, it represents that, the worst of it, have not been told, not had boundaries set for them for my entire life. We're talking probably 3 generations now of women who are grown up and have never had proper boundaries set for them. And that's a failure of masculinity there. That's masculinity, I think, and fatherhood, and you refer to this a lot, is about being that boundary. I forget that name. Do you remember that fellow, the deaf fellow who spoke at the conference? I always forget. Ivan. Oh man, he put it very well, and he talked about the father's role along those lines. So, folks, if you get a chance to watch Ivan's video coming out and Elliot's video coming out, I think they will all be public in a month or 2, right?
It should be, yeah.
Great. So with that, I'll just say this one thing. I've mentioned this before as at the conference. I'm going to be delving into God, in some of my future videos, and I'll be coming from the perspective that that atheism is an indefensible position. You cannot justify atheism. That'll be the start of the opening kind of salvo in my treatment of this. And I hope that if you can, I'll pass you the link when I get this out. It might be some time before I complete that particular video. I'm doing quite a lot of research on that now. But I hope that you can come back on the show and tell me what you think of it.
That would be amazing. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Awesome. If anybody has a question, quickly write it in the comments right now, a question for Elliot. Otherwise, I'm going to sign off. And I'm not seeing any questions come up. There's lots of comments there. But Elliot, once again, thank you so much. You're doing a great job there. It was a very sharing a lot of personal journey, personal struggles. That's inspirational to a lot of men, I think. I think you have a lot to offer men who are going through similar journey that you've gone through. So with that, I like to tell my subscribers, do something you love every day. Because no matter if the whole world is against you, and we will have a lot of troubles facing us, you still need to enjoy your life every day. So find something you love if you don't have something, and do it every day. With that, I hope you join me next time on Coffee with Steve. Ciao.